You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thank you for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. What we have for you today, reaction to Josh Gordon's suspension, including the unique perspective of Cris Carter. On National Signing Day, we asked, do stars translate on the field? And we talk Super Bowl, Josh Gordon, and more with First Take Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
What issue do you have with me before we get to Josh Gordon?
Well, the issue I have with you is, again, we've been doing the show a long time, and we
Yes.
communicate and things like that. And, I send you a text yesterday, and you don't answer
What
me.
time did you send it?
What time did I send it?
Yeah, I woke up this morning to find a text from you. I didn't bother responding at 3:50 a.m.
Well, do you ever read your texts or anything like
what
that?
time did you
I sent
send
it
it?
at 7:14. 7:14. I was watching a Seinfeld episode. By the way,
I guess I had put the phone down.
What was pretty cool is last night they have a few of them in a row, and they were like season 1, episode like 2, 3, and 4.
I saw the question you asked.
So yeah,
me.
the question was when it went to Jerry's parents who were in town for a wedding, Morty wasn't Morty.
Right.
Okay?
Correct.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a different father first, so I asked you, when did, my Morty come into play, and you ignored me.
The Morty that Jerry Seinfeld's father on that show that everyone knows is Barney Martin, who died a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He also, for those who remember and love the movie Arthur, the original with Dudley Moore, he played Liza Minnelli's father in that movie. So he was a great, hilarious actor.
Yeah.
Yes, so you're correct. There was an episode, I think it was only one, maybe two episodes,
That's all I was
where someone else played the dad.
Looking for a little bit of,
I did not get the text until I woke up this morning.
7:14. 7:14.
I had put the phone
What's
down.
What's
by
going on
then.
at 7? What do you mean you put the phone down?
I had already put it down
You
where I
have a
leave
special
it.
place for it? You put it and leave it for the night?
Yeah, I plug it in over by where I leave my stuff that I'm going to grab in the morning when I leave the house.
7:14.
I was busy working with Stevie on a homework project.
Listen. I just won't bug you anymore. Don't worry about it.
No.
No, we're good. You know what? I'll just see you in the morning.
If I thought for 1 second that you would actually follow through on that, I would be delighted. But you're constantly in need of things.
Yes, that's me.
As opposed to all the times I've texted, Mike, I can't get the tractor to start.
The light went out of the stove. I don't want to relight the pilot.
That's exactly right. Am I going to blow my house up if I try and relight the pilot? Stevie twisted an ankle. Do I ice it or do I heat it?
Oh, my gosh.
I have a lot of questions for Golick on a regular basis.
Okay.
All right, let's start with Josh Gordon. This certainly comes after the news of last week as no surprise that Josh Gordon, the mercurial and extraordinarily talented wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, has been suspended for at least this coming season. This after testing positive, if you will, or failing a test for alcohol. And I went back and reread when this news came out yesterday. I went back and reread the letter that he wrote last week. If you recall, he wrote a letter to Stephen A., Charles Barkley, and Cris Carter, each of whom had expressed concern over him or for him in different ways. And when I read his letter, I appreciate where it's coming from. I think it's well written. I think it's well thought out, and I understand what he's trying to say, which is he doesn't like people who don't know him judging him. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is, when you are a public figure, you are not judged for who you are. You are judged for what you do. That's just the reality of it, and them's the rules of the game. And if you don't want to be a part of that, then you can't be a part of the game. And while it is both impossible to accurately read a person without knowing that person, and I have never met Josh Gordon in my life. We just talked about Johnny Manziel, and what we can hope is, we said it, that the first step in solving a problem is acknowledging that you have one.
Right.
As I read that piece from Josh Gordon over again yesterday, the thought I repeatedly had, and you could underline sentence after sentence, is this is a person who does not recognize that he has a problem and what it is costing him. And look, not everyone fits into a box. So maybe all the opportunity that is in front of him is not his priority. And I can't tell him what his priority should be. But I think most people would recognize that he is squandering, maybe on the verge of permanently throwing away an opportunity for something that 99% of the people in this country would dream to have. And that is a reality, whether he wants to face it or not.
Completely agree. And I think we have to understand this is on him. This is on Josh Gordon. Because too many times I hear about everything else of the reason. It's ridiculous that he's not allowed to have a drink. It's ridiculous he was suspended for this. It's ridiculous for that. You know what? They're the rules of you may not like them. You may not like the rules that are out there. But if you want to be a part of and employed by a certain company, you follow their rules. If you don't like their rules, you can go work somewhere else. You can try and change the rules. That's fine as well. But while them's the rules, follow them. And now he has to make a choice. And for those that are saying the NFL needs to take care of him, you people, you don't and for those saying that, you don't understand the help that is offered, not just by the league, but by the union, by the players' union as well, his own union, and the league. The help that is there for you, but you've got to be willing to take it. As Green said, you have to acknowledge this at some point. You know, if you're in another company and you get popped for DUI or something like that, and they saying, oh, don't worry about it, we'll put you into rehab. No, they fire you. They fire you in a lot of cases. In this case, he's doing this to himself, got suspended last year, had another chance, and got suspended again. That's on him. It's on nobody else but him. And so for those that are going to say, well, this person or that person needs to do this or that for him, he needs to do something for himself. That's what he needs to do. Let's stop blaming others for the rules around it, and let's look squarely in the mirror. That's what Josh needs to do. Or people around him he obviously isn't getting a lot of leadership from somewhere. I don't know. I'm not in the man's life, and I haven't gone through this, so I know I'll get tons of email and tweets. Golick, you never went through this, you don't know. All I have to say is, if we're here at ESPN, if we got in trouble, will they force us to go into rehab, or do they suspend you and then fire you? And it happens in a lot of companies. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, look, every place is different.
Yes, every place is different.
In a place where when you work in an environment where you are a part of a union, which a lot of people are, you don't have to be a rich, highly paid football player to be part of a union. My mother was a school teacher in the New York City public school system for 25 years. She was a part of a union.
Right.
So there are rules that then become collectively bargained about how different things are going to be handled. He is living under the rules that have been collectively bargained by a union of which he willingly has become a part. So the point is that he says in his letter, I went back and reread it, because last week when it first came out, it was during the Super Bowl and there's all this stuff going on, and I read it, but I didn't sit down and really read it carefully and digest it, because I knew we weren't going to spend that much time on it, and in all candor, I wasn't all that interested in it. Now I felt it was time, let me just sit down and really read this thing. And if you read it, I mean, you could underline paragraphs in it that, listen, it's very well written. It's very well thought out.
Yes.
I think a lot of the points in it are good, which is he's basically saying to Cris Carter, Charles Barkley, and Stephen A. Smith, you guys don't know me.
Right.
You've never met me. You've never taken the time to get to know me, and you're now speaking very personally about me. And that bothers me. I understand that.
I'm with you.
I understand where he's coming from on that. But at the same time, he's 23, and all three of those guys have lived a lot longer than he is and have learned from their own mistakes. And one of the benefits of having experience in life, you do this with your own children. I'm not trying to suggest that Josh Gordon should be treated like a child, but you do this with people who are younger than you that you care about. And based upon the fact that he is young and extraordinarily talented, all three of these guys care about him to some degree.
Right.
They want to see him maximize what he is so obviously capable of doing.
And just it seems like he's just throwing it away right now.
You impart the benefit of your wisdom. Listen, I screwed up in my life. Here's how I screwed up. I'm telling you, don't do what I did, because here's what it cost me. Here's some advice, and you can ignore the advice if you want to.
Sure.
But he seems to take extraordinary offense to it.
Exception to it.
Which is just from my little vantage point, and as one who has spent a lot of time in therapy in my life, that strikes me as an immediate red flag. Immediate red flag. That's just deflecting immediately. Not my fault. Not my fault. What are you talking about? You don't know me. You don't know what I'm talking about. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what I'm living through. He then goes into the details of his childhood, which were difficult.
Yes, they were.
Challenging. No question about it.
And he admits in there, listen, I made some mistakes. I put myself in bad situations.
My point is, Cris Carter's, if you've ever sat and talked to CC, as we have a million times, he lived through almost you can't say identical. Everyone's circumstances are obviously unique and different, but similar circumstances. So he really has walked in those shoes. He's walked in Josh Gordon's shoes almost exactly. So I think that the wise thing would be to take to heart what people who are trying to help you, whose intentions are obviously positive, are trying to offer you. And he seems unwilling to do that, which suggests to me that he is still in a stage where he's saying, I don't have a problem. This is everyone else's problem. It's not my problem. And he does take some responsibility for what he's done, for his decisions and all that kind of stuff.
He said, put myself in bad situations that I shouldn't have done, and he's paying the price for that. And now he sits a year. He won't be at the facility. And for those that are going to say, well, shouldn't he be forced to go into rehab? It's going to be on him. If he wants to get back in the league, that's it. If he wants to get back in this league, he's going to have a meeting with the commissioner and with the league, and they're going to spell out things that they are going to want him to do. He's got to do them, and part of that is going to absolutely be get help. So there's a lot of it on him. So he can keep telling people, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. Well, I mean, he's got some decisions to make. He's already made some poor decisions, which, again, he's admitted, but he's still done them. So now what's next for him? Because the guy's got a lot of life to live, forgetting football. But there is part of it, which is the sport in football, because that's what we talk about here. So that's going to be, he's going to have a meeting in a year with the commissioner because he's out. Gang, and this is all on him. He's out. He can't go to the facility, nothing. So he's going to have a meeting, and he's going to have to sit down in front of the commissioner, whoever he's going to sit down in front of, and say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, to get my life in order to try and get another chance to play football. So it's on him right now. He's had some, and he's made some poor ones, but some serious decisions he's got to make going forward. And I agree with you. There are people that are giving advice, trying to give advice, and some people don't want advice. He's not the first or the last person that won't want somebody else's advice. So I understand that. But there are people that have walked in his shoes that are trying to help him, and he seems to still be at the stage where he doesn't think he needs it.
At the end of the day, at some point, he's going to have to decide whether being a professional football player is a priority for him. And if it isn't, it isn't. It would strike many of us as just a shame because it's a waste of such an extraordinary talent that he obviously has.
But it's his talent to waste if he wants.
That's exactly right. Yep. He would hardly be the first person, nor would he be the last, to squander an opportunity. And if he wants to live his life without that, that's obviously entirely up to him. Listen, there are thousands, probably maybe at minimum tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are right now going through similar circumstances to his that no one gives a darn about. No one gives a darn about these people because they don't have some extraordinary talent. Right. So who cares if they squander their lives? We worry so much about these college football players not getting their education. How about the hundreds of thousands of kids who don't go out and go on from high school and get an education that can't play football? We don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about them. So if this isn't a priority to him, that's fine. That's for him to decide, not for us to decide what his priority should be. But if he wants to be a football player, then he better get his act together in a hurry because he's this close to being gone.
And I guess that's my point. Instead of everybody rifling blame everywhere else, let's put the blame where it needs to be, right on Josh Gordon when he looks in the mirror. That's where it is. So he has decisions to make. As you said, he can still have a career. He can still salvage this thing and have a career. He's close to it being done. But if he flies right and sits in front of that commissioner and says, I've done this and this and this, you know what? A team's still going to want him. A team is still he's on. I'm with you. He is hanging over the edge of being completely done and no one wanting to take the chance on him anymore. But if he really, really gets his act together, he could still have another act in the NFL.
We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. They'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal, even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. Look, you were a teammate of Cris Carter's in Philadelphia.
Yes.
You saw up close and personal the struggles that he went through. He was as close as Josh Gordon is right now to being gone for good. And Buddy Ryan threw him off the team.
Threw him off the team and to Cris Carter. And that's why Cris was one of the only ones that said the Browns need to cut him. This was on a suspension last year. That's it now. Again, every situation isn't the same. What Cris Carter was saying was, I walked in those shoes. This is what worked for me. You know what? And that's what you look at. When you're in a situation, you look at somebody who was in a situation maybe and see how they handled it. That's how it was handled for him. He was told, go away. He was told, you're done from this team. So that was there has to be a wake-up call somewhere.
And at that moment, and he's told the story, I wouldn't tell it if he hasn't told it 8,000 times, is at that moment he arrived at a crossroads in his life. And he could go one way, and he wasn't going to be a football player. And who knows what would have become of his life. Or it could go the other way. Look at him. Look at the life Cris Carter has, right? I mean, if you know very few people who are living better than Cris Carter is. And so that is still very much there for Josh Gordon. Now, I don't know exactly how old CC was when that happened to him in Philly. He was probably just a little bit older, not younger, older than Josh Gordon is now. Josh Gordon's 23.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how old Cris was, but he couldn't have been younger than 23, I wouldn't think, because he played for the Eagles for a couple of years.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, I mean, I can't imagine he was younger than 23 when that happened.
And he wasn't much older, so, I mean, right in the same area, right in the same wheelhouse.
And look at him. He went on to have one of the greatest careers of all time. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's got a huge job as an analyst here. He's one of the most respected people in the football world. And he's got a family and all that. I mean, he's got everything you could possibly want in life. So all that stuff is still out there if you find a way to make it happen. Of all the things I heard people say about this yesterday, I thought one of the most interesting came from our Jeff Saturday, who played for Tony Dungy in Indianapolis for years and years. And he relayed on SportsCenter with Lindsey Zoniak a story of what it is that Tony Dungy used to say about players' behaviors and what it demonstrated.
Tony Dungy used to say it best: availability is the greatest ability. You got to be available for your teammates to depend on you and trust you, whether that's injury or it's doing something else, that's putting yourself out there. You can't depend on the guy. And so if the guy's getting in trouble and repeatedly getting in trouble and now he's getting suspended again, he missed 12 games last year. I mean, that should have been a wake-up call, right? And if I remember correctly, I think Cleveland allowed him back in and dealt with him that way. So now they're saying they won't. It's a difficult situation. And teammates at some point say, hey, look, he obviously doesn't want to be a part of it. Going back again to Tony Dungy, he used to say it in our team meetings: you'll show me by your behavior and your decisions and choices whether you want to be an Indianapolis Colt or not. I don't have to cut you. I don't have to fine you, because the way that you act will show me if you want to be that. And if you do, these are the things you'll do. And if you don't, move on. Best of luck to you with somewhere else.
Well, I mean, it can't be any plainer than that. And I'll say it again. Between the union and the league, the amount of help that is there for you is immense. As you said before, because of the product that you are and can be on the field, it seems to be much more than the person out there that you don't know that doesn't play a sport. The help is here. The help is here for him. It's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. They're not going to forcibly put him into rehab. They're not going to. I would imagine in most companies they don't. They can offer it to you as help, but you have to take it.
Well, think about what we're saying. That goes back to the beginning of the conversation. The first step towards solving a problem is acknowledging you have one. Why does a person seek that help? Why does a person take advantage of those resources? Because they acknowledge to themselves they have a problem. And if you don't, then you won't. You will hear words of an entirely different sort in exactly 1 minute from the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And I think those are the ones that everyone needs to hear. That's 1 minute from right now on Mike and Mike, after a word from LifeLock and a not-so-fun fact. Mike, years ago, I was a victim of identity theft. It took me years to fix everything. Someone got a credit card in my name. It was a nightmare. I couldn't rent an apartment when I was looking for one. It really took me forever to get the thing straightened up. Since then, I've signed up with LifeLock, an industry leader in identity theft protection.
Their new LifeLock Ultimate Plus service goes beyond just monitoring ATM and credit card transaction. It provides protection for your identity, bank, and retirement accounts, credit cards, even the equity in your home. Listen, nobody can stop all identity theft, but LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. Sleep easier knowing that if some thief goes after your identity or life savings, LifeLock is on it. Help protect yourself with LifeLock Ultimate now. Visit LifeLock.com. Enter the promo code Mike. You're going to save 10% on your LifeLock Ultimate Plus membership. That's promo code Mike at LifeLock.com to get a special 10% discount. LifeLock.com. Network does not cover all transactions.
Pick it up right where we were with the Josh Gordon situation. And again, going out and seeking help and problems. And this, of course, capping off what was, look, the National Football League season ends on Sunday in a thrilling finish to the Super Bowl, and 1 or 2 days later, now look at all of the stories that have come out again surrounding the NFL with high-profile names and all of the different variety of issues that we've seen. And it goes to show you that you got a lot of this kind of stuff in the NFL, and that has been a part of the difficulty that the league has had with his image this year. Thomas Davis was voted the Walter Payton Man of the Year, and that's an extraordinarily prestigious award.
Linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. He's gone through multiple ACL injuries. And you just look at now, we're talking about Josh Gordon, Johnny Manziel, the kid Cody from Baltimore was just released from the Ravens for cruelty to animals. Counts against him there. Go back to what we've seen during the season and the year the league had, we know, the failings from the league side. But then let's get back to the reasons the league was in the situation, which admittedly they failed, and we talked about how they failed and how they're trying to get better. There were players involved in doing horrible things. Players. And we're talking about players now. Thomas Davis is one of those players. He plays on the field with all these guys. And his message after he won this award was to his peers.
To the guys in this league, man, I just want to say to you, let's take charge. Dare to be different. We're a village. I talked about it in the video. Let's step up and be a village of guys that make a difference. Let's change this world. We're well compensated for what we do. Let's show these kids how much we care about them. Let's give the media something positive to talk about instead of always bashing our league.
It was a really good speech. You heard him sniffling there. He was emotional during that speech. They showed a beautiful video about, his road and what he's doing now, how he recovered from injuries and what he's doing for others off the field. And that was part of that acceptance speech was his message to his own players. Guys, let's pick. And we'll say this again. Listen, the high percentage of players are great guys and do a lot of great things. That should not be lost in this, but we all know, and people want to rip the sports networks for putting up the bad. It happens in the world as well. All the headlines in the newspapers are usually the bad first. News leads with the bad. That's unfortunately the way it goes. So that's what happens here as well. And Thomas Davis is saying, come on, guys, we can do better. We can do better. And so instead of it almost at times it feels like the union and the league are party lines, button heads, to if one side says the sky is blue, the other finds a way to fight him on it. So he's saying let's work together here and let's better this product.
Does that remind you of anything? Anything like our nation's capital?
Well, that's what I said. Yeah. When I said party lines, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
When across the road there, as I said, one could say the sky's blue and the other will fight you the whole way.
Right.
Instead of, Thomas is saying, come on, guys. We're better than this. Let's show people we're better than this. I thought that was fantastic.
I do too. I did too.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike. You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com. Mike and Mike.
We opened the show this morning by talking about Josh Gordon, and as I mentioned, I with the news yesterday that he has indeed been suspended for at least 1 year by the NFL, I went back and reread the letter that he wrote last week, which was addressed largely to our friend Cris Carter, to Stephen A. Smith, and to Charles Barkley. And as I read it differently from the way I read it last week, because I took a little more time last week with the hectic nature of the Super Bowl, and I came away with some thoughts, and I shared them here this morning. But the person who I think has the thoughts that are the most worth hearing on this is our friend Cris Carter, who joins us now this morning on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. And Cece, before we get to that, first and foremost, from all of us who have become friends of yours and for you becoming a member of our family on Mike and Mike this year, congratulations to you and your family with your son Duron signing with the Indianapolis Colts. I know that was a long time coming. You had been talking to me over the course of the year about what you thought might happen and hoped might happen, and I know this was one of the things that you were really hoping would happen. So congratulations on DC Chillin signing in Indianapolis.
Thank you, guys. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a long road for him. He's had a lot of struggles, school, socially, growing up, maturity-wise. So, when you have a kid, all our kids have dreams. And for those who have been involved in athletics, Golic understands this, to be able to see their dreams come true, but to also see them get through some hardships in life. To me, it's very, very rewarding, and it shows his maturity, and he still has a long way to go, but yesterday was a great day at our house.
Yep, he's gone down that road, and now he's going to get his chance with the Colts. It leads us to a guy in Josh Gordon who's had his chance had a chance, and at one point we saw his abilities being the leading receiver, receiving yards in the league, even missing a couple of games of that season a couple of years ago. Now finds himself suspended for the season again. So this has been a road from your comments, and he even wrote that open letter, did Josh Gordon, to you and Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith. So first, once you hear he's suspended for the season, your initial thoughts on that?
Really sad. I think it could have been avoided. This is what happens, and he doesn't think that he has a problem. But that's everyone gets to a crossroad, in making decisions. And obviously he hadn't hit rock bottom enough. I'm just going to go based on my experience. Okay, Golick, after I got cut, the first week in September, 1990, it took me I wasn't using any substances then, but I was still drinking. It took me another 2 weeks before I stopped drinking. And since then, it's been 8,900 days. 24 years, 4 months, and 14 days. It's been 1,271 weeks since I had a drink, which is equivalent to 12,818,000 minutes that I haven't had a drink. And I just got sick and tired, man, of being sick and tired. I got sick and tired of letting people down. I got sick and tired of living a lie. And one of these things to getting it is you have to accept it in your life that I got a problem and my life has become unmanageable. And you need help. And it's more, too, with a spiritual awakening to ask God to help you with your shortcomings. And then once you get into the program, it's a long list of things. It's about making amends and and trying to remove the shortcomings and admitting to other people. Like, I've gone to a lot of my teammates in Philadelphia and apologized to them, man. I might have cost them a Super Bowl. I might have cost them money. And I wasn't no great teammate. So I've gone through all those steps and all those steps in the program, and I believe in the program. One of our problems as far as athletes is you're supposed to be able to do it with some type of amenity. Well, we're pro athletes, so it's going to be hard. Now, Josh doesn't think he has a problem, so I'm not going to say he has a problem, but he's been suspended for 3 years in a row. He's in stage 4 of the drug policy. Now, how do you get there? You don't get there by eating Skittles. So I'm not going to get involved in what substances he failed the test, but it's obvious, all right? You don't get suspended for a year. I only made it to stage 3. So people try to think, well, Chris is in a different situation than Josh. Yeah, because I got cut. And I stopped. I stopped using all chemicals. And that's one thing I believe that's wrong. The kids that are struggling today, all they do is go for one chemical that they're testing for cocaine or marijuana. All they do is start drinking, and eventually that becomes a problem for them. So it's a cry out for help. Josh, you need some help. Now, on a personal level, I talked to Johnny Manziel's people. I'm working with them. Johnny's cried out for help. He needs some help. And he's going to get it. He's going to get the best care that me or anyone else that's been down this road can get. Because part of our obligation, even once we understand the steps, it is to reach out and help others understand the addiction. So for me, this is not personal about Josh. I'm not offended by the letter or anything. The letter was proof. The letter was proof of how lost he is and the lack of understanding. What did me and Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith have to do with the decision the NFL made yesterday? Nothing. We did nothing at all. But I'll give Josh his space. I'll continue to pray for him. And I hope my phone rings. I hope he calls me. Like other guys around the league have been doing for years, and we've been able to get great results with them. So for me, it's not good to see Josh's career and him being suspended for a year, which could be the end of his career.
It's a sad day, and it's well said. And I think, CC, we're going to let yours be the last word on that, because yours is the one that I think matters the most to people around there listening. So we'll leave it at that. CC, have a wonderful, take a little time to relax, and it's been a wonderful football season. You get rejuvenated. We'll see you back up here sometime real soon. Thanks, CC.
I greatly appreciate it, guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
It is our pleasure as we wrap up the pro football season to welcome once again Monday Night Football's Jon Gruden on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, guys.
All right, I'm curious about this because I have had the great pleasure and privilege of sitting in that room sometimes with you guys on the road on Sundays and watching football with you and the rest of the Monday night crew, and that's when you've got like the 8 games all going at once, and I see you sitting there taking notes on a variety of games. But when it's just one game like that and you're watching the Super Bowl, especially at the end, are you coaching along with Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, particularly on that final sequence that winds up deciding the Super Bowl with the run from Lynch down to the 1 and then the decision to throw the pass and the decision by Belichick not to call a timeout? Are you going through in your mind all of the different decisions that they are making, and what were you thinking as that sequence was playing out?
I think we were all doing that, and that's what we wait for the Super Bowl for. I don't have any problem with throwing the ball there with 20 seconds left. You have 1 timeout left. I would want to use all 3 plays as well. I just had a problem with the kind of throw they selected. Anytime you get in the shotgun at the 1-yard line and throw a 1-step inside breaking route, the ball can be tipped. Bad things can happen. I thought the safer bet would have been an old-fashioned play-action pass, maybe a little spider 2-wide banana, slip the fullback out in the flat. I was thinking spider 2-wide banana, fake it to Lynch, throw it to the fullback or incomplete. Now we got 2 downs to go. But what a catastrophic, I can't even say the word, play for Seattle.
Spider 2-wide banana. I thought Frank Kelly was on the phone for a minute there. So even before that, your thoughts, what stood out to you in this Super Bowl before we even got to that last sequence?
I thought Tom Brady's patience was incredible. He had the 2 interceptions, the one in the red zone. He brushed those interceptions off. He stayed patient throughout the game. He got a couple critical matchups, one on 3rd down, Gronkowski versus Chancellor. Then he got Gronk one-on-one against K.J. Wright. When Seattle made a mistake, he found the mistake and he corrected it. But I thought his patience, his poise, his quarterback play down the stretch was incredible. And I really think Seattle suffered with the loss of Cliff Averill. I think championship teams win with a 4th quarter pass rush, Mike. You know that. You got to close people out with your pass rush, and the loss of Cliff Averill really hurt Seattle.
Mike and Jon Gruden, I mean, injuries in general, I know you don't want to make excuses because injuries are a part of the game of football, and if you're playing, the old adage is if you're hurt, don't play, and if you're playing, you're not hurt. But the reality is we saw a lot of poor tackling in the defensive secondary of Seattle, that Legion of Boom, much of it with Julian Edelman breaking tackles and such, and that's very uncharacteristic of the Seahawks. Did you think that the injuries to Chancellor and to Sherman and to Thomas played a significant role in that?
I'm sure it did, and Jeremy Lane's injury as well. He left the game early after the interception, but I think you have to credit what New England is capable of doing in these no-back open formations. Edelman, Vereen, Amendola, they're all very wicked after the catch, and when they put them in space against zone coverages repeatedly and Tom Brady's pinpoint accuracy, it's hard to defend. And it's hard to be a good tackler all the time in one-on-one situation.
Mike and Jon Gruden. Now, I can't imagine the Super Bowl game in which you coached, your team won easily. So you weren't facing a situation where there's 1 minute left and you have 8 million decisions that you have to make. So Bill Belichick not using a timeout at the end winds up being a huge positive factor in the game for the Patriots. If the Seahawks score and run out the clock, then I think Belichick is going to rightly face a great deal of criticism for not using his timeouts and giving his offense a chance to come back on the field. I will confess, John, I was screaming at the television before the interception, why isn't Belichick calling a timeout? Were you thinking that if you're on the New England side, you should be using a timeout in that circumstance?
Well, you certainly want to give Tom Brady time to have a chance to bring your team back, no question about it. But sometimes you want to put pressure on the other sideline and the other quarterback and the decision makers. And I think that's what Bill Belichick did. And he was calculated. I think he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to concentrate on the situation at hand. And you got to give Belichick credit once again. those doggone Patriots, they continue to frustrate the entire league.
And they made obviously, the kid makes an incredible play, and Belichick had them in the right matchup, and they had practiced the play, so all of that. I totally agree with you. Give them credit. I'm just curious, on a decision like that, is that something with the myriad of meetings and all the different things that you'll go over the course of a week leading up to a game, or the Super Bowl 2 weeks leading up to a game, is that something you'll cover? If we're in this situation and their clock is running with, X amount of time remaining, we're going to use our timeout here, or we're not going to use a timeout there, is that something that you actually have predetermined, or is that a decision he's making on the fly?
You can determine things in meetings in a nice, cool, air-conditioned room when everything's nice and calm. You can also just trust your gut, your experience. Nobody has been in clutch situations more than Bill Belichick. I think he had a real grasp of what the situation was, what he wanted to do. He was going to live or die with his defense there, and I think that's what he did in that situation. And don't forget, Browner. His acquisition in the offseason stuffed that play. He crushed Curse on the line of scrimmage, and Malcolm Butler made the play of the year for New England. Great job acquiring Revis and Browner to really do some things they weren't able to do in the last couple of years on defense.
Yeah, I don't think enough credit goes to Browner. When you watch that play, watch how he attacks Curse. He stops any kind of trash from getting in front of Malcolm Butler to make that beeline for the ball. Just a great defensive play by both those guys. So now we're into the offseason where decisions have to be made, and you have teams that have new coaches getting to know their players. Other teams' salary cap situations, like Seattle, they're going to have to pay Russell Wilson now. How will that affect the cap? And then in Cleveland, you have a situation we just heard about, or we just talked about Josh Gordon, but Johnny Manziel, the quarterback you hope is going to quarterback your team, put himself into rehab. Your other quarterback is Connor Shaw, who was a rookie last year. So just take us in those meetings, head coach, personnel, director, GM. As far as on the field personnel, what are the discussions going on right now at that quarterback position?
I can't imagine what's going on in Cleveland. This is the most disappointing thing that I've seen in football all year. I love Johnny Manziel coming out of A&M. Spent a lot of time with him. I still think he has the talent to be a really good player, but some of these players got to get their self-discipline in order. They've got to understand this is pro football. To be a successful businessman, a successful parent, a successful husband, successful at anything, you got to get yourself together off the field. And I'm concerned. I'm sure Cleveland's concerned. I'm sure they really don't know what they can do right now with the status of Manziel. And we know Hoyer's a free agent. They don't know much about Connor Shaw, but the clock is ticking, and hopefully Manziel, Josh Gordon use this as a wake-up call and get themselves back to playing football.
John, we have so enjoyed another football season with you. We'll remind you that all year long we brought you hashtag Gruden's Grooves. You can listen to them anytime on Slacker Radio and the Slacker Radio app, and we'll certainly be talking plenty between now leading up to the NFL draft and more. So thanks for a great season, John, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys. I'll miss you. See you later.
The best of Mike and Mike.
The letter was proof of how lost he is and the lack of understanding. What did me and Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith have to do with the decision the NFL made yesterday? Nothing. We did nothing at all. But I'll give Josh his space. I'll continue to pray for him. And I hope my phone rings. I hope he calls me.
That was Cris Carter. It was just sensational this morning on the day after Josh Gordon suspended for at least a year by the NFL. Mike and Mike, our Sports Center, brought to you by Exxon and Mobil. You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com. Now, I'm told, let me just try and juxtapose with this Marshawn Lynch thing, okay? So should these athletes be role models and all that kind of stuff? And of course, would it be nice if everyone was?
Right.
Sure, it would be nice. But everyone isn't the same as everyone else, and people don't all fit into their little quadrants that we want to put them in. So I'm told, I didn't see it. We played some little snippets of Rob Gronkowski on Jimmy Kimmel the other night, right? And it was very funny. And Gronkowski is hilarious. One of our executives just sent me a note that said Gronkowski was asked on Kimmel the other night to name the last book he read. And in keeping with the conversation that we are having this morning, he said it was To Kill a Mockingbird in 9th grade.
Really?
Now, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
When they introduced Rob Gronkowski before the Super Bowl, What's the only thing that they say about him before it starts? When he stands there, Rob Gronkowski, looking at the camera, what does he tell you?
What college you went to?
Right, which ostensibly he graduated from.
Arizona.
But he's telling you he hasn't read a book since 9th grade. So, I mean, is that sending a message to young? No one ever says, well, what kind of message is that he's sending to young kids out there? He hasn't read a book since 9th grade. Well, it would stand to reason. He went to 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and some years of college. I have to admit, I don't even know if he graduated from Arizona, but he went to the University of Arizona and played there long enough that you'd think he would have to have read a book. So my point is, now, was he joking around? He probably was joking around.
Could have been joking around.
And I think Marshawn Lynch, to some degree, is joking around with the stuff he's doing, too. I think it's now become a big game, and I think he is enjoying it to some degree.
I completely agree with
that. So to sit there and say, well, what message is this sending to young people? You know, not everything is a message. And I just think that to some degree, all of us, the collective we, have made far too big a deal of the way Marshawn Lynch handled his media responsibilities.
I agree, and I start with those screaming to say he shouldn't have to speak, which I think is ridiculous. You know, I mean, that's the conversation we were having, and Larry Foote, one of his peers, spoke his mind about it as well, as we discussed, and we'll discuss again. So I'm with you. The whole thing, at the end of the day, about talking to the media, it's ridiculous compared to the real issue and real problem some of the players have in this league.
Now, we'll take a little time here to mention that today is National Signing Day for college football. And as we pointed out, the coverage starts coming up in just a few minutes, actually, on ESPNU. 11 hours of National Signing Day coverage on ESPNU. And so, you know, they'll be grading all the recruiting classes and who's got the best 5-star recruits and all that kind of stuff. And for those who are big college football fans, that's obviously a very big day, and it is of interest. Now, in a moment, we're going to give you a story that suggests it may not mean quite exactly what you think it means. But off the top, let's do the headline story here, Mike, is who would it look stands ready to clean up here?
Well, it's Alabama yet again.
I thought I had read a couple of weeks ago that Alabama was about to sign the best recruiting class in history. That's what I thought I had. Did I get that wrong? I read a story a couple of weeks ago that said they were going to sign the best, what would have been, by some measurement, the greatest recruiting class of all time.
You know what was considered the best recruiting class for a while was mine coming into college. They had the parade All-Americans. We had 13 parade All-American. We didn't have this, or at least I don't recall when I was playing the star system that we have now. I was ranked the top D lineman in the country. I was on the cover of a All-American magazine with Sean Salisbury and Jack Del Rio and Bill Fralick and a running back named Aaron Roberts. But I don't recall stars ever being associated with it. But there was a parade All-American team, and there were 13 of us on that parade All-American team, and it was considered the best class of all time from ranking. And, you know, my college career, we ended up not doing too well. So it didn't turn into anything, which could go to the point that we're going to get to possibly of sometimes the ranking systems are a bit inflated.
Well, somewhat remarkably, there were 0 5-star recruits on either of the two teams that played in the Super Bowl on Sunday.
0.
So the New England Patriots, who were the 1 seed in the AFC, and the Seattle Seahawks, who were the defending Super Bowl champs and the 1 seed in the NFC, combined had 0 5-star recruits.
And again, for those that may not know the system, 5-star is the best. 5, 4, 3. 5 is the blue chipper. 4 is the really, really good player. 3 is, good player. 2 is a little below that, and obviously, you can figure it out. They ranked 48. They had the 22 starters for each team plus the punter and the kicker, so that's 24 per team. So 48 players total. These are the starters for the Super Bowl. Of those 48, 8, 0 5-stars, 0. 8 4-stars. That comes out to about 16%, I believe, in quick math, 16, 17%.
Mm-hmm.
9 were 3-stars. The rest were either 2 stars or not graded or didn't even have a grade.
Russell Wilson was a 2-star prospect.
Yeah. So listen, you know the big stars and some of the top stars, and you see them playing to see why they're 5-stars. But 48 starters in the Super Bowl, no 5-stars, 4 8-stars, 9 3-stars, the rest 2 or less.
Out of the 50 top 10 recruits over the 5-year period from 2006 to 2010, 22% of them went on to be first-round picks in the National Football League. I think all things considered, that's a pretty high batting average.
Yes.
So I think that actually speaks well.
Mike and Mike.
Joining us now in our studio to offer their Subway Fresh take as they are warming up for their 15-round or 2-hour bout a little later this morning. The stars of ESPN2's First Take, Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, are here and ready to go. They follow us, of course, every morning, coast to coast. How are you, fellas?
It is a privilege and an honor to be here, but I just hate to face this guy so early in the morning because I'm looking at 2 hours of having to stare at that face across the desk today, and I'm not sure I can take 2 more hours.
Well, first of all, stop lying to the American public. You know I look good. That's number one. Number two, and more importantly, you should consider it an honor and a privilege for me to be here at 9 a.m. to deal with you.
If they only knew what it took to get here.
You know what's amazing is you guys don't even warm up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right into it.
Here's the thing. All kidding aside, because people ask Mike and me this all the time. Down deep inside, you guys love each other, right?
It's my man. It's my man. I love him to death.
I don't always like him, but I love him.
I relate to that.
Feelings mutual.
Yeah. Okay, Mike and Mike, let's start with this. I'm just to put a final ribbon on it. We'll let you guys have the last word on it as far as our show is concerned. Just final, ultimate takeaways from the Super Bowl, particularly the extraordinary way in which it ended. My initial reaction watching it, I almost put a foot through the television. They didn't give the ball to Marshawn Lynch. As I had a little more time to think about it, throwing a pass on second down came to make a little more sense to me. Jon Gruden commented on it with us this morning. But either way, we'll let you guys have the final word. What is the ultimate takeaway?
You should go first.
Stephen A., from the way the Super Bowl ended.
I listened to Jon Gruden and his explanation. Respect that man immensely. I don't care what he had to say. I don't care what Trent Dilfer had to say. I don't care what anybody has to say that disagrees with me. I believe it was the worst call in NFL history. You've got Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, the closest thing we've seen to Earl Campbell back in the days, those who know football, that Houston Oilers great running back, the power that he brought to the game. This is Marshawn Lynch. I totally understand. I don't want to take any credit away from the New England Patriots and a phenomenal job that they did. Legion of Boom certainly didn't look that way on Sunday afternoon. But you have the ball at the 1-yard line, less than 36 inches away from a Super Bowl championship, and you decide to target Ricardo Lockett. There is no explanation. There is no excuse. There is no justification for that. And I know that Pete Carroll is a great coach. He's a champion on the collegiate level. He's a champion in the NFL. That's not to take anything away from him. I'm just talking about this play, this game. To me, it was the worst call that I have ever seen. And I believe that it will follow and haunt Pete Carroll for the rest of his career, especially if he never wins another Super Bowl title.
And I am with you, Mike Greenberg. I am leaning back toward it wasn't nearly as bad as it was made out to be on Monday morning, because the season-long numbers suggest strongly that it was slightly safer and more effective to throw on that down from that distance. And Marshawn Lynch has not been undeniable from the 1 or half-yard line. He was 1 for 5 this year, 5 out of 12 for his career. And in the end, you know what I hate about this? I hate that this is taking so much of the focus off the fact that an undrafted kid from West Alabama saved the football game with one of the great breaks on the ball I have ever seen at any moment in any game. And bigger picture, we are taking the focus off what I thought was the greatest clutch fourth quarter I have ever seen any quarterback play in any Super Bowl. And that was Tom Brady with a QBR of 97 against that all-time great defense in that quarter on that stage, 10 points down to Seattle. Are you kidding me?
Well, get your emotions caught up all you want to. I don't care about feelings when it comes to Mr. Butler. Last time I checked, he's in the NFL. He's on the field at that particular moment. He's not playing for free. He got paid. He made a great play. Tom Brady wants to give him his MVP truck and all of that stuff. He seems like he's benefiting quite fine. The fact is that we're here to discuss what transpired. And what transpired is that none of this matters if Pete Carroll gives the beast mode the ball. Even if they lost, everybody would have been like, you went with your bread and butter. And I keep telling you this, Skip Bayless, because you don't want to listen to this. Your identity means everything. Percy Harvin's gone. Golden Tate's gone. I'm in the Seattle locker room after they beat Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia a few weeks ago. And they're saying, we miss those guys, but at the same time, it fits with our identity. It's about the Legion of Boom. It's about our physicality through Marshawn Lynch. It's who we are. Michael Jordan didn't surprise anybody. Great players, great athletes don't surprise you. In the end, they're like, here we come. What are you going to do about it? Pete Carroll went against that. I don't understand why he did it, but he will rue the day that he did. He will never live this down unless he captures another Super Bowl championship.
Final thought. Most people have forgotten that there was no way Seattle would have been in position to decide whether to hand it or throw it, if not for the second luckiest play in the history of the Super Bowl to Jermaine Kearse.
Luck is a part of the game.
The NFL gods finally said, you know what, Tom Brady? We owe you one, and they got it back. That's what happened.
Luck is supposed to be a part of the game, not stupidity.
Yeah.
Listen, I lean more toward you, Stephen A. I would have handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. I know in the sequence there would have been at least a pass, so I understand that side of it. But I'll say this. If you're going to throw the ball, what was everybody in the world expecting on that play? To hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch, right? Run a play action with Marshawn Lynch.
How about bootleg?
A play action to him and bootleg Russell out. You either have an open guy, you run it in, or you give a guy a souvenir in the fifth row and you live to fight.
Or if you're going to throw a pass, how about what Ben Roethlisberger did to Santonio Holmes in the Super Bowl in Arizona years ago? You know, it's right in the corner of the end zone, sideline. He's either going to catch it or it's going to be incomplete. It's not going to be intercepted.
Yeah, all that said, great play. Great play by Browner, jamming Kearse and giving Malcolm Butler the line to go make the play.
All right, let's move forward then. And two other topics here again. Skip and Stephen A. They come up right every single morning after us, 10 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2 with First Take. Right now they have their Subway Fresh Take, and Subway experience the breakthrough taste of new grilled chicken strips. Subway, eat fresh. We talked a lot, and as you guys did last week, of course, about Marshawn Lynch and the great player that he is, but all of the discussion during the course of the week was about his behavior with the media, and Steve, in particular, I saw you with some very strong comments on that. Larry Foote, who was a longtime NFL veteran, was on the radio in Pittsburgh and had an interesting take on this. I want you both to hear what Larry Foote said, and then we will respond.
You hear in the media, he always mentions his foundation and what he likes to do for the city of Oakland. You know, I'm from the same type of urban environment that he's from. And the biggest message that he's giving these kids, he might not want to admit it, is the hell with authority. I don't care. Find me. I'm going to grab my crotch. I'm going to do it my way. In the real world, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. I mean, how can you keep a job? And I mean, you got these inner city kids, they don't listen to teachers. They don't listen to police officers, principals. And these guys can't even keep a job because they say F authority. And just imagine what Bettis and the impact he had on my life as a youth and the other kids in the city, and it's the total opposite. And he needs to really check himself and understand that you're hurting these kids. You're not helping them. Yeah, you can give them PlayStation and free camps and T-shirts and cleats, but the biggest message that you're giving these guys is the hell with authority, do it your way. In the real world, you're hurting these kids because it doesn't work that way.
That was Larry Foote. Again, longtime NFL veteran. Stephen A., what do you think?
Let me jump in. Let me jump in. I feel like Larry Foote has been watching First Take because my friend Stephen A. Smith has been so strong and so courageous on this very same theme again and again and again on our show. And I felt like Larry Foote was echoing what Stephen A. has said. Now you take it away.
I deeply appreciate that, and I deeply appreciate Larry Foote's words because I could not have said it any better, although I've repeatedly have tried. The reality of the situation is very, very clear. We have a lot of kids in the inner city, whether they be black, Hispanic, or beyond, that have a hard time embracing and accepting responsibility for their actions, particularly when it comes to listening or needing to listen to authority. If you don't own your own business, you don't get to do what you want to do and ignore your employer. You don't get to sit there and snub your nose at authority the way that Marshawn Lynch was doing. Everybody, you know, talking to Arian Foster, a friend of his, talking to Michael Robinson, a former teammate and still a friend of his. Very, very passionate, two very articulate and accomplished brothers will come vehemently to the defense of Marshawn Lynch. And I understand where they're coming from because they swear that he's a good guy. He's very philanthropic and charitable with his time and his energy and his effort to help inner city kids, particularly those in Oakland. I applaud and appreciate that. But I'll say the same thing about Marshawn Lynch that I've said in a different way about Josh Gordon or anybody else. It's not about you. It's about the lives that you impact. And we're talking about potentially millions of lives. 114.4 million people watched the Super Bowl, which means that at least half of those folks saw what was transpiring during media day for Super Bowl week. And repeatedly, time and time again, you snubbed your nose at authority. And the NFL, you signed a contract to play in the NFL, to play okay, and also to help them market the brand and the shield, which you specifically profit off of. You then turn around and snub your nose at them. Why? It's inexcusable to me because you're thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about anybody beyond them. And what I tell a lot of people all the time, I give lectures throughout the country, as you all know, especially Skip. I tell folks all the time, yeah, I'm here. Thank the good Lord I'm here. Because if ESPN sat there and said, at the last minute, Stephen A., you don't get to speak at the University of Pennsylvania or Vanderbilt or Purdue or Indiana.
You spoke at Vanderbilt?
Actually, not Vanderbilt. Purdue, Indiana, Cincinnati, Temple. But I got Vanderbilt coming up, a few others, by the way, in the next couple of months.
All right.
My point is, if ESPN says you can't go, guess what, y'all? I'm not showing up. I don't care how I feel. Y'all don't cut my check. ESPN does. And I understand authority in the chain of command, and you're always supposed to respect
Let me
that.
ask you this, though, on the other, because I agree with you, and I've said the same thing about it. But then the other side of it is the old Charles Barkley quote. Does Marshawn Lynch owe that to the kids? Is it his responsibility when he's up there because he doesn't think he should be up there, so he's forced to being up there? Should his thought process be, well, I'm going to go up there because of the kids?
Maybe his thought process, you can make the argument that he doesn't have an obligation to those kids. I would say that he does, because if you're in the public eye, whether you want to be a role model or not, you are. But the bottom line is this. You can shove all of that aside. You work for the NFL. You understand? They don't work for you. And you signed a contract to represent the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seattle Seahawks may pay you, but they're under the purview of the National Football League. And with the National Football League comes those rules and regulations. And your unwillingness to follow it touches on everything that Larry Foote said. And ultimately, it resonates in a fashion where you're sending the wrong message that is going to detrimentally affect everybody. You mark my words. I want y'all to look at me when I say this, because it's money. You see the way Marshawn Lynch act. You won't hear NFL executives admit this or say this. But let another brother comes along that looks the part, looks like him, sounds like him, seems as defiant in him, but doesn't run a 4.3. Let's see what opportunity he gets down the line because of the way Marshawn Lynch acted. They're going to look at Marshawn Lynch and use that as an excuse to ostracize anybody that's remotely close in appearance to what he appeared to be like, what he was like during media day, but obviously not having his talent. Now, if you got his talent, they'll make excuses and concessions for you all day long. But if they don't have his talent, but they share everything else about Marshawn Lynch, they won't be in the NFL. Mark it down.
Okay. I love what you just said. Now here is the sad but true, only in America flip side to everything you just said. You know and I know negativity will sell. You know and I know Marshawn Lynch became the biggest story at the Super Bowl because he wouldn't talk, right? Marshawn Lynch had 2 national TV commercials running during the Super Bowl. And as much as I love and respect Larry Foote, who is a really good football player and has been for a long time, I think he's 34 years of age, I'm not sure people know who Larry Foote is for the most part, except people in Pittsburgh and Arizona. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's certainly not nearly as well known as Marshawn Lynch, that's for sure.
Yeah, but the flip side is that Marshawn Lynch didn't get those commercials just because he was defiant. He's got those commercials because he's beast mode, because he's the closest thing we've seen to Earl Campbell. I'm saying there are not too many people that are going to measure up to him, but there's a whole bunch of cats that's going to look and act like him without his ability, and they're not going to get the opportunities that he's getting, which means that ultimately, indirectly, unintentionally, he is hurting the lives of thousands, maybe even more, by choosing to conduct himself that way. And I like Marshawn Lynch from everything I've heard about him and everything I've been told. And I don't think the media week defines who he is. But that is the impression that he gave to hundreds of millions of people. And the fact that he got commercials from it, it just shows how bankrupt we've become morally as a society, because there's no way in hell that he should have got endorsement deals based on how he acted.
Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, First Take every morning following us on ESPN2. Next topic, Josh Gordon yesterday, no surprise, we knew it was coming, suspended at least a year by the National Football League. And I opened the show by saying this morning I went back and reread the letter that he wrote last week, because in the midst of Super Bowl week, I read it somewhat quickly. And as I reread it again yesterday, which is redundant, I read it differently, and Well, either way, let's play what because the letter was addressed in part, at least, to you, Stephen, to Charles Barkley, and to Cris Carter, each of whom, in your own way, have been very vocal about your concerns for him. We had CC on this morning. Here's what he said.
For me, this is not personal about Josh. I'm not offended by the letter or anything. The letter was proof. The letter was proof of how lost he is and the lack of understanding. What did me and Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith have to do with the decision the NFL made yesterday? Nothing. We did nothing at all. But I'll give Josh his space. I'll continue to pray for him. And I hope my phone rings. I hope he calls me. Like other guys around the league have been doing for years, and we've been able to get great results with them. So for me, it's not good to see, Josh's career and him being suspended for a year, which could be the end of his career.
It could be the end of his career. He's at a deep stage into the program right now, so there are a lot of questions about the future of Josh Gordon. For either of you guys, obviously, Stephen, you're more directly connected to this because he addressed you in the letter, but for either of you, what is your take now that the official ruling has come down from the NFL?
Incredibly sad for Josh Gordon, but he deserved it. That's the bottom line. If I sound like I'm lacking compassion, I apologize for that. But I live in the real world. And the real world is that you can't get suspended 3 consecutive seasons in a row. First for 2 games, then for 10 to 12 games, now for at least a year, because he hasn't been suspended a year. It's at least a year. And then after that, they'll consider whether they're going to suspend him longer or bring him back. You're in stage 4 in terms of violating the league's drug policy. These are facts. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, and it's something that Cris Carter, I agree with every word that he said, and I applaud this brother for the work that he did. I personally reached out to Josh Gordon through friends of his to let him know, here's my number, call me. I doubt there's anything that I can do, but if there's anything that I can do, I will be more than happy to do it, because I am not a guy that sits up here rooting for people to fail. I want everybody to get paid. I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody to enjoy the life that I am enjoying, to be quite honest with you. But Josh Gordon, I don't hear people saying this enough, and I'm going to say it right here on national television and radio for everybody to hear. He's absolutely right from a literal perspective in this regard. We don't particularly care about Josh Gordon, but I do care about what you represent. I do care about the lives that you impact. So, no, I'm not going to have Thanksgiving dinner with you, and we ain't going to exchange Christmas gifts, okay? And I'm not sitting there waking up and dreaming about Josh Gordon and how can I help him. But I am thinking from a community perspective, from a perspective that far expands beyond Josh Gordon, to think about the lives that you can potentially touch and what you and your problems are emblematic of. I am a black man from the streets of New York City. I grew up around drug dealers. Drug dealers saved my life, for crying out loud, because they kept me off the streets. I know what Josh is talking about because I was surrounded by that all my life. But we all make decisions, and you have to be held accountable for them. And this man, to walk around pointing the finger, Skip pointed that out best when he talked about him being in the denial, and I'll leave that up to Skip to elaborate on that. My point is that there's a whole bunch of kids out there in the streets that admire you and marvel at your talent, that see what you do, and they're looking at you like, what on earth is going on? You're throwing away millions. Why? You know, you can't get addicted to something you never try. I drove in here listening to Golick, and I completely side with Golick on this one. It's about Josh Gordon, man. You cannot get addicted to something you never tried. This is not, you didn't take weed for medicinal purposes or whatever other drugs you did for medicinal purposes and a doctor prescribed it to you. With all the education that's out there, you knew exactly what doing that stuff would get you in trouble for. And if you can write a letter and put it together and point out how, you know, all of this stuff led to this, well, how come you couldn't have been knowledgeable enough to walk away from it then? Because you obviously are intelligent enough to articulate why it became a problem, which means you knew it would be a problem and you chose to do it anyway. I'm sorry. I can't sit around with, being sympathetic towards you at the expense of anybody else. I'm a Star Trek fan. And you remember what Spock said. The lives of the many outweigh the lives of the few. I'm thinking about the lives that I can touch that are trying to go in the right direction, not a dude who clearly is interested in going on the wrong side of the tracks.
It's a remarkable reference. Skip,
are we out of time?
No, absolutely
okay.
Not. And I mean, to manage to appropriately incorporate Mr. Spock into this discussion, yeah. I'm extraordinarily impressed.
And you know what? You shouldn't have to apologize for you not showing sympathy, because I completely agree with you. Too much of this and not enough of looking in the damn mirror at where the problem really is.
Amen.
I've gotten to know Josh a little bit off the field. This young man has depth. He has IQ. He has insight into everyone except Josh Gordon. I believe he wrote that letter. You were a little doubtful about that.
I think he had help.
Okay, he might have had a little help, but I think he's capable of writing every word in that letter. And it was classic denial. Johnny Manziel said, finally, I have hit bottom. I can't beat this by myself. I need help. Josh is saying, problem? What problem? I don't have a problem when the record screams again and again and again and again that you have and have had a long-standing problem that you need to get fixed. So if he's not going to get it fixed, I'm going to have to conclude that his days in the National Football League are over. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that where we're heading?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I'd like to point out, guys, is that I get, whether it's tweets, it's emails getting stopped on the streets, there's a whole bunch of ignorant people out here in this world. I've had people walk up to me, what's your problem, man? What's the problem with weed? It's legal in 2 states. It's you know, for medicinal purposes, 23 to 26 states, you could do that. I said, according to the NFL, it's not allowed. And that's not to say that Josh Gordon's only problem, because we happen to suspect it goes deeper than that. I'm simply pointing out how you have apologists out there who will look at the NFL and act like it's a problem, or will look at you and I and act like it's a problem. And I'm like, no. What are the rules of your employer? You don't work for you. You work for somebody else. These are their rules. You got your hand out wanting a check from them. Then capitulate and acquiesce to their rules and regulations and live your life well. Are you trying to tell me that you're allergic to doing so? We got too many young people out here, man, that got this attitude that they just want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. You are not getting anywhere in life with that attitude. You will not win. And those who don't preach that to you are doing you a disservice, because that's not the real world.
We're going to have to leave it here, although we could do 4 hours of this, but if these guys do 2 hours of this every single day, they'll get ready and do First Take following us at 10 o'clock Eastern, coast to coast on ESPN2. Thank you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
It's great to have both you guys here again. They'll be covering these and all of the other topics around the world of sports.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike. What fuels you? Here's Kim going downtown for a dance class. Going to her daughter's soccer game.
Come on, Katie, you can do it! Woohoo!
Kim fuels up at Exxon and Mobil stations, where our quality gasoline helps improve fuel economy, and where she could win $1,000 in free Exxon Mobil gift cards just by telling us what fuels her, like dance class or her kids. 10 weekly winners. Full details at Exxon.com or Mobil.com. Exxon and Mobil. Energy lives here.
No purchase necessary. Ends April 7, 2015. Restrictions apply. Actual fuel economy benefits may vary.